The Bogosity Podcast, early and ad-free. Become a subscriber at Patreon, Subscribestar, or Discord. Use the links at donate.bogosity.tv.
Welcome to the Bogosity Podcast for the week of August 9, 2026. The podcast that'll burn the bridge when it comes to it. This is your host, Shane Killian. Let's filtrate the news of the bogus. So XAI is trying to block an absolutely terrible law in Minnesota. It's being billed as an anti-nudify law, meaning it would be illegal to take a real person's picture and change it to depict them in a state of undress. The problem is, it's so broadly written, it can apply to numerous legitimate uses as well. Calling the attempt clumsy, XAI filed, liability attaches even if the depicted persons consented or created the image themselves, and even if the image is never shared. Liability also attaches even if the image has artistic, scientific, political, satirical, educational, medical, or religious value. And again, even if the company has deployed near-perfect state-of-the-art technical controls to prevent the generation of nude images. And a lot of the problem was pulling the language from a completely different sort of law. Quote, that definition was drafted for non-consensual touching, and thus covers the inner thigh, buttocks, or breast of a man or woman, as well as the groin and primary genital area. HF 1606 accordingly bans ordinary depictions of men without shirts, people in shorts or swimsuits, and other body parts routinely displayed in public, far beyond what an ordinary person would consider nudification. HF 1606 flouts these foundational First Amendment principles. It is content-based and vastly over-inclusive. It bans protected, non-sexual, consensual, and non-disseminated speech that has no connection to any legitimate interest in preventing distribution of non-consensual nude images. And narrower, less speech-restrictive alternatives already exist. But Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison whined that XAI had waited until the last minute to file, 3 days before the law took effect, and almost 3 months since the law was passed. Laws generally take a lot more than 3 months between passage and taking effect, and 3 months isn't a ridiculous amount of time to get your ducks in a row for filing a lawsuit. But still, District Judge Donovan Frank denied XAI's TRO because it would be too difficult to ask Minnesota to not do something. So apparently, if you want to enforce a bad law, just make it take effect quickly enough after you pass it. But constitutional challenges are made all the time mere days before a law takes effect. That generally isn't seen to be a problem. The judge ruled, XAI filed a motion on July 29, 2026, and only 3 days before the law is set to take effect. Such a delay in bringing the action and the motion suggests that harm is not immediate. Well, that's a silly inference to make, and not a legal one at all. Especially since the judge doesn't explain why 3 months was more than enough time in this case. He just says the delay suggests that harm is not immediate. That's a bit conclusory for a TRO. Why would 3 months provide a reasonable opportunity to seek a preliminary injunction before the law takes effect? He doesn't say. And saying that the harm isn't immediate when the penalties are $500,000 for each access, download, or use? A single image made by Grok that violates this law, which, again, is incredibly broad and covers a lot more than nudity, could mean XAI has to pay a lot of money every time someone comes across that post and it's displayed on a screen. A single image could cost them many millions, if not tens of millions of dollars. Users on X are already reporting Grok refusing to make completely innocuous images and videos. One user named Keep Going Annie posted, "Apparently Grok Imagine doesn't want to let me make videos right now. I even paid money I don't really have to get extra credits just to burn through too fast because it's moderating my every attempt right now. I mean, someone tell me why they can just do a little dance while they are working? Is dancing being moderated now? I don't get it. My prompt is just, no words, they dance as they work. The reason is this very lawsuit. In fact, if I didn't know better, I'd say the whole law was just a way for them to grab a lot of Elon Musk's money. The law won't work anyway. The primary source of deepfakes of celebrities and other people is home-brewed AI based on open source models. And as I've pointed out before, back in the 90s there were plenty of horny nerds who were willing to take a celebrity's face and put it on the body of a porn star with Photoshop. Some of them were actually quite convincing. No, you won't solve the problem. You'll only create a bunch more. And cynically, sometimes that seems to be the idea.
Presenting the greatest game this side of Yugoth. You are H.P. Lovecraft's cat, and your name is Nick. Right, we can't say that on a podcast. Well, anyway, that's the point. Your name is a joke, so now you are out for revenge. You become the Necronomicat. Using the Necronomicon, you come to the present day to buy a cat. That's a gun. For a cat. It's a fat cat. But the Necronomicon is treacherous, and it let in Lovecraft's monsters. Now, in a crumbling world, you must fight. Build your team, buy guns and armor, buy items of dubious legality, defeat the bosses of each level, then take Lovecraft down. Play Necronomicat. The link is at cat.bogosity.tv. Yeah, we're doing cat.bogosity.tv, not that other one. What, you want me to get kicked off the internet or something?
In a similarly stupid piece of legislation, the Senate Commerce Committee voted 15-3 to advance the Screen Act, a sweeping nationwide age verification bill. First of all, insert all of our criticisms of state age verification laws. They apply here too. But here, it's even worse, because there's no requirement that there be a significant portion of the website that's harmful to minors. In other words, if there's even a single piece of objectionable material on the site, that site must do age verification. That's not just going to affect Pornhub, but Netflix as well. It'll also affect Reddit, Discord, X, and Bluesky. It arguably could even affect Amazon, eBay, and Etsy. And it goes beyond a mere attestation that the user is an adult. It says, quote, requiring a user to confirm that the user is not a minor shall not be sufficient. So basically they'll have to prove they're an adult and tie their access to that site with their real identity. That is every bit the privacy and cybersecurity nightmare it sounds like. And the Act provides no meaningful limits on collection, use, or retention limits. Meaning that a site will never be punished for hanging on to your information for a longer period of time, but might be punished for getting rid of the data too early. So the incentive will be for them to hold on to it forever. Now, I know what you're thinking. I'll just use a VPN. Sorry, they thought of that. They specifically require age verification on traffic from known VPN addresses, regardless of where the IP address originates from. Cue the giant sucking sound of adult websites and streaming and social media sites alike relocating to countries that don't have stupid laws like this one. And as we've seen in the past, what starts with an excuse to protect children from adult content ends up blocking or restricting access to LGBT content, women's health, and even political speech. In reality, this won't do a thing to protect minors, but it will stop adults from accessing lawful speech, curtail privacy and anonymity, and severely endanger the security of all users of the internet far and wide.
I'm brother Ezekiel, and I know how naughty thou hast been. So naughty, thou needst a VPN. Hide thy iniquity from prying eyes, and make sure the liturgical authorities remain ignorant. Take thy browser to vpn.bogosity.tv to get BoxPN. At $6.36 a month, a price only the most penurious would balk at, thou shalt have unlimited high-speed connections to servers all over the globe. And they don't log connections. Thy privacy is assured. That should please you sinners. Just remember, the Lord sees all. When traveling, make it look like thou art still home. At home, ensure the elders at your ISP don't take out their judgment with traffic shaping and DMCA notices. Up to 5 devices can connect at once, almost one for every deadly sin. Keep thy sins private. Go to vpn.bogosity.tv.
The anti-AI people are just as venomous on social media as they ever have been. If only they would loose some of that venom towards flock cameras, we might actually get somewhere. The thing is, when the press does manage to actually cover a story involving flock cameras, it's yet another negative consequence of them. They don't seem to be catching much in the way of criminals. In fact, they're so bad that, as we covered in the past, multiple cities have canceled their contracts with Flock following public outcry. They're full of false positives that result in innocent families being slammed to the ground and arrested because a Flock camera misread their license plate. That's without even getting into stories like the Texas cops using Flock to track, without a warrant, someone allegedly seeking an abortion after she'd already left the state. It doesn't help that, through it all, Flock doesn't seem to care at all about the harm that it's doing. They just wave off all critique with statements like, "We can't control what police do with our technology." Here's the thing about AI in all its forms. It doesn't make you better at anything. It just lets you do what you do faster, more efficiently, and at greater scale. So when you've got cops that tend to be incompetent, corrupt, and wrong, Flock allows them to achieve new levels of high-scale corruption and wrongness at blazing speeds. Actual police work still remains difficult, and something police want to avoid as they look for one shiny thing after another to be a shortcut for them. For example, an automotive journalist was unwittingly driving a Range Rover that the Flock cameras got into their little AI brains was stolen. For days, the police tagged Joel Felder and his family, but kept losing him as he returned home. So one day, they're out running some errands, when all of a sudden they're surrounded by a SWAT team. The stolen plate was New Jersey 3403 DTM. Felder's plate was New Jersey 3410 DTM. Close enough for government work. Turns out, the system was tracking 5 plates with 34-something-something DTM. His was just the first to get nabbed. 5 different vehicles flagged as the stolen one, and not a single cop looked at that and said, "Huh, that's a bit weird. Maybe we shouldn't act on that until we've sorted it out." Nope, just have the cops surround him. Who needs actual police work? And most telling is what one of the cops said to him, quote, "You're lucky we're in Plymouth. If you were in Minneapolis, they definitely would have come at you with guns drawn." Oh, by the way, turns out there was never even a stolen vehicle to begin with. Someone misplaced a license plate, reported it as stolen, then found it, and called them back and said, "Never mind." Still didn't matter. If Flock is that bad at tracking something as distinctive as a license plate, imagine how much worse they are at tracking other things such as faces, or cars based on unique markers such as bumper stickers or faded paint. Chrisana Elser was accused of stealing a package supposedly because a license plate camera placed her truck near the scene. Even though she wasn't even there, she proved that with a neighbor's doorbell camera. Once again, we're seeing that there's no attempted verification before cops run with information they could easily figure out was bad on their own. Instead, the flock camera is taken as gospel, and the citizen is put in the position of having to prove their innocence. That wasn't made any easier by the cops refusing to look at the doorbell video. In fact, it took her 5 weeks to get the charges dropped, and that was with proof positive of her innocence. We shouldn't feel obligated to have a verifiable timeline of every single one of our movements just to fight bogus criminal charges. It's up to the cops to be absolutely sure of their evidence before they move in like that. The problems with AI is never the AI. It's always the humans. And it's especially dangerous when it's humans with authority. You know, this wouldn't be so bad were it not for the fact that science fiction has been warning us about this for decades. People have a computer that tells them stuff. One of the characters warns, what if the computer's wrong? Then it turns out the computer is wrong and bad things happen, and you learned a good lesson, right? 2001, THX 1138, Westworld, Running Man, War Games, Brazil, Gattaca, Logan's Run, Forbidden Planet, This Island Earth, several Star Trek episodes, both original and next gen, all sorts of science fiction warning us about this very problem. Maybe people don't watch enough science fiction these days, because we're living in the world that so much of it warned us about. I want to tell you about the eyeglasses I've been wearing for years. As people can see on my videos, I have a very strong prescription, which makes glasses more expensive, especially when I need computer glasses, reading glasses, prescription sunglasses, and most expensively, progressive lenses for general everyday wear. To save money while still getting quality glasses, I get them from Firmoo. In fact, I just got a pair of progressives with high-index aspherical lenses and a nice pair of frames my wife loves for just over $100. It would have been $500 to give them through my eye doctor. Not only do they look good, the glasses are durable. I've worn many pairs for several years without problems. All orders come with a 30-day return policy, a 3-month warranty, and one-on-one customer service. Go to Firmoo, that's FIRMOO.Bogosity.tv anytime you need quality glasses at a low price. Once again, that's Firmoo.Bogosity.tv. And now it's time to expostulate this week's biggest Bogon emitter. Man, the Trump administration has done some stupid things before, but this one takes boneheaded idiocy to a whole new level. Just when you think their jingoistic nationalism can't go any further, they go and ban Roombas. Yes, robot vacuum cleaners. The FCC announced it was going to restrict the import of, quote, foreign-produced advanced robotic devices. Basically, they wanted to stop those humanoid robots China is making from being imported to the U.S. But again, the regulations they wrote were so vague and sweeping, see what I did there, that the robot vacuum cleaners are getting restricted along with it. Maybe if they weren't so busy chanting, USA, 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 they'd have time to catch things like this. The ban mentions humanoid robots and quadrupeds, but it doesn't limit itself to those. It covers any new robot that travels over the ground, weighs more than 4.4 pounds, including the dock, can sense its environment, and connects wirelessly. That means it covers lawnmowers, sidewalk delivery robots, and those robot forklift thingies that drive all over Amazon warehouses. If you already have one, don't worry. They're not coming to pry it from your cold dead fingers. This is only about new robots being imported. Foreign robots represent a security risk, and so robot companies must manufacture in the U.S. But like with the router ban, the FCC isn't targeting ones with poor security or exempting ones that can show sufficient security. The thing is, I could get behind them if they were trying to target the piss-poor security of home devices. They could require custom passwords and strong encryption to make it so that we aren't all just buying equipment for bot farms. But the bans aren't actually about poor security, and the waivers for U.S. manufacturers don't have to show good security. It's all about where they're made. That's it. And that doesn't make us any safer. So all of that gives the Trump administration yet another biggest Bogon emitter. Are you looking for a new hosting provider? Have a new website you want to get going? To use the very hosting provider used by this podcast, go to hosting.bogosity.tv and you can sign up for many different hosting solutions, including shared hosting, WordPress hosting, reseller hosting, and even managed and unmanaged VPS and VDS hosting. And by using my link, you'll get $20 off and a free site migration. Enjoy fast, secure, and scalable web hosting with built-in automated backups and a unified control panel designed for flexibility and growth. They've made things incredibly easy with their AI website builder. Or go more advanced with their VPS hosting, giving you full root access to your choice of Linux OS. Let their experts take care of patches, performance tuning, security hardening, monitoring, and daily ops. All with responsive and knowledgeable support. Whatever your hosting needs are, you can find them at hosting.bogosity.tv. And now let's over-grammatizationalist superficialize this week's Idiot Extraordinaire. And this week it goes to Wisconsin State Representative Francesca Hong, a Democratic socialist who, well, there are a lot of reasons we could give this to her. For example,
we're going to take on big tech and with our moratorium on AI data centers.
Yeah, stick it to big tech by supporting the big content cartels. She also pushed for an economic justice bill of rights that's every bit as cringe as you're thinking. So yeah, there's plenty we can get her for, but mainly this is about a post she made to X. Cancel Thanksgiving. Should have done this in 1621. There was no Thanksgiving in 1621, dumbass! The event in question didn't take place until 1623. Actually, it didn't happen at all, but I have a video on that if you want to learn more. Quote, if it takes a worldwide pandemic for us to realize we should stop celebrating colonialism and the original super spreader event that killed indigenous folks and women, so be it. Yeah, she spelled it indigenous folks. She was trying to say indigenous folks. Hey, Hong, spell check is a thing. Anyway, the super spreader event way predated the Pilgrims in 1620. You can just look this stuff up. CNN's Caitlin Collins asked her about it, and here's her response.
Thanksgiving is also a time that's incredibly painful for many people in our communities. And so I think there I wanted to make sure that people understood that there are multiple views, but views can evolve. And the position that I'm running for right now, and I think my background as a chef, will actually help me become a better governor that's able to bring more people to the table.
Yeah, she gets to have power over your life because she's a chef. Gotta say, that's a new one on me. The pushback on X was inevitable, of course. Democrat David Axelrod, chief strategist to Barack Obama, wrote, it's answers like these that cause many to think if this chef wins the gubernatorial primary in Wisconsin, Democrats may be cooked. We see what you did there, Axelrod. How badly do you have to suck that Democratic Socialists of America won't even support you? I can hear the cries now. You can have my turducken when you pry it from my cold, greasy fingers. The primary is on August 11. I'm actually kind of rooting for her. Think about it. If she gets the nomination, imagine the material I'll have. So all of that makes Francesca Hong this week's Idiot Extraordinaire. Well, that wraps up this Looks Like I Picked the Wrong Week to Quit Drinking edition of the Bogosity podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please go to donate.bogosity.tv for several ways to support and discord.bogosity.tv to join the discussion. Subscribe at the Discord, Patreon, or Subscribestar, and you can listen early and ad-free. Thank you for listening. Until next time, here's a quote from Frank Zappa. There's no reason to assume that my idea of what's better would really be better. I resent it when other people try to inflict their ideas of betterness on me. I don't think they know. And I can't see any authority on the horizon that's got any answers that seem worthwhile. The Bogosity podcast is licensed under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 International License.
Bogosity.